Hi, I'm Dr. Folu Balogun, also known as Folu for short.
Hi, I'm Dr. Onyinye Balogun. We are the Docs.
Thank you for tuning in to our episode today.
Today, our guest is a very good friend of mine, someone I have done a good amount of work with within the community. His name is Christopher Williams. I call him Chris. Welcome to the show, Chris, and thanks for being our guest today.
Hey, Folu, how are you? I feel like you're my esteemed friend. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I'm a little sad that I don't get to meet your wife, but it's okay. Next time.
So, Chris, can you tell us about yourself? Who is Christopher Williams? Tell us a bit about your background.
So, a little bit about my background. I'm an immigrant, born and raised in Jamaica, came here in the late 80s with my parents. Both my parents are Jamaican, and my parents and my sister built pretty much the rest of my life here because I was a teenager. I was pretty young, finished high school, did some college, worked in finance and then in the public sector, and developed a focus in my work on project management. So a lot of what I did revolved around project and performance management. And it was something that was a gift, if anything, because I was able to apply it to all different areas of my life. Some of the things I love to do is planning events, throwing parties, things of that nature. And all the skills that I learned with project management allowed me to do all of that. Little did I know how much more it would lead to as life went on. But now, fast forward to today, I run a nonprofit that I founded called Heart, Body, and Soul. And that organization is focused on Black men's health. We're focused on providing the tools, the resources, the information to ensure Black men have better health outcomes and to ensure that they have the ability and they see value in sharing their stories and being open and honest about the challenges they face when it comes to their health, their mental and physical health.
So why don't you tell us about your health story, the cancer story that you're sharing with us today?
Yeah. What are we? We're in 2026. Back in 2015, I would say specifically October 1st of 2015, I had a life-changing event happen. And for the majority of my life, I've been a pretty healthy person. I grew up with a family that was very fitness and health oriented. My mom was a dancer. My father played sports, played cricket, played soccer. And that left me feeling like sports was something I had to get into. And so I loved soccer anyway, so it was easy for me. And he and I used to run together. So I was always a physically fit person. Used to be a very slim person, right? And as time progressed, life, you get married, things happen. Fast forward, I was married, I got divorced. And October 1st, I had some issues where I was having some chest pains and things of that nature. And it didn't make sense to me because frankly, that time I was probably the fittest I've ever felt in my life outside of when I was a teenager, right? And was in the gym 6 days a week and so forth. And so to my surprise, I was having a heart attack. Totally unexpected. I was at my desk working at my job and then had to leave from there to go to my doctor. I didn't know it. Wasn't sure at the time it was a heart attack then. And by the time I got to his office, he called the ambulance. That was it. It was, let's get you admitted. Let's figure out what's going on. And that was sort of the beginning of my life changing, not in a negative way, but just changing, just changing and me learning new things. So 2015, October 1st was my first heart attack. And then 2021, about September 14th, I remember these dates, 2021, I had another incident where I was having pain in my lower abdomen that turned out to be appendicitis. So rushed to the hospital. They performed an appendectomy and determined that there was, about a week later, came back to me to let me know that they found a tumor sitting on my appendix. And that, as you know, is what led to the diagnosis of appendiceal cancer.
We think of cancer and heart attack as diseases and things of older individuals, something that in your retirement, and that's when people mostly get diagnosed with this. How old were you at this time?
Unfortunately, these are myths, right? And these are myths we have to debunk because it has nothing to do with age and everything to do with your body, your genetics, and all these other things. I mean, I'm not obviously not the doctor you are, so you also know this. So at the time, I, like you, like many people, I would say, would have thought that there's no way at the age of 42, I was 42 when I had my first heart attack, I should be having a heart attack. Because that's for, just like what you said, I know you know it's not the case, but a lot of people think these are things that happen to old people. Cancer happens to old people or heart attacks happen. That's not true. This is why it's so important for us to know our family history and know our own history as far as our numbers, where we are when it comes to our numbers, where for cholesterol, for our blood pressure and things of that nature. So it was a total surprise to me that at 42, I'm having a heart attack. It made no sense. And then 2021, when I was diagnosed with cancer, I was only 48. Again, very young. I mean, in my eyes, that's something that happens to someone, I'm sorry, in their 70s or something of the sort, not a young person, especially someone who was eating healthy. Because I don't eat fast food. I don't eat any kind of fast food. Once in a while, maybe a slice of pizza I used to eat, right? But even that was rare because cheese just doesn't do well with me. So a lot of things I stayed away from. So it didn't make sense. But what does make sense, right? This is life. This is a thing called life. A lot of things happen.
As men, we typically ignore our symptoms and keep it to ourselves. This is particularly prevalent in Black communities and other underrepresented groups. So what was it about this, or what was it that made you not ignore yours? Because you fit in that group that typically ignores it.
And that's the mistake we often make. And this is why I stress the importance of doing the work that we're doing, that you're doing with the Onc Docs, you and your wife are doing, and that we're doing with Heart, Body, and Soul, because people need to be educated on the fact that it's really important not to ignore these things. I want people to understand why it's so important to, when you feel something, say something. New York has a see something, say something. When you feel something, say something. When you feel something, I need you to communicate that to your loved one, to your doctors, everybody, because telling your loved one is important so that, God forbid, you're unable to speak or something else happens, they can also advocate for you. So when I felt what I felt, I told my doctor, and my doctor then told the paramedics when they got there, who then communicated that to the doctors at the hospital. And then my doctor took it a step further. This is for the heart attack now, took it a step further by calling the doctors at the hospital that he taught, because my primary care physician at the time was a doctor who used to teach others. So I basically went in now almost given like VIP treatment, because all these people knew I was his patient. And if he says something is going on, do not ignore it. What I didn't share with you about the heart attack that was unique, I know we're talking about cancer, but I just wanted to touch on this too, is that the issue that I experienced, the heart attack that I experienced, was not something that was picked up through normal testing. So EKG didn't pick it up. Chest x-ray, nothing else picked it up except for them testing my blood. And when they did, they checked my cardiac enzymes. That's when they noticed my troponin levels were high. And that's what led them to know with certainty that I was having a heart attack. So now with the cancer, thankfully, I didn't pay attention. I didn't ignore the abdominal pain that I was experiencing and chalk it up to maybe just feeling a little off. And doing what, my Caribbean family would say, drink some tea. Not my family directly, but I'm just, it's a thing in the Caribbean, like, oh, you don't feel your stomach bothering you, drink some tea. And I could have done that, right? I could have said, oh, I'm gonna drink some tea. But then, Folu, the pain got so bad that I started to feel nauseous, and I knew something else was going on. And I was doubled over in pain. So I went to the hospital. And it's a good thing I went there when I did, because they said the way things looked, my appendix would have almost ruptured. And it would not almost, my appendix would have ruptured if I took too long to get there. And so getting there in time, and them also finding the tumor on my appendix, is what saved my life.
An appendix that ruptures, if it's just infected or inflamed, it's bad, but it's still fixable. It's a big difference if it is appendiceal cancer, because if appendiceal cancer ruptures, then the cancer spreads to the abdomen. And that could really be the difference between cancer that's curable and cancer that's incurable. So Chris, tell us about how the treatment that you had for this cancer.
Yeah, so appendiceal cancer falls under, I believe would fall under the heading of a gastrointestinal cancer, right? And there are different types of gastrointestinal cancers. You have pancreatic, you have stomach cancer, and the list goes on. Colon cancer, of course. So it's really important. Anything to do with the stomach and gut health is something that we have to take seriously. I've learned, and I'm still learning, that the gut is the second brain. It may even be the first brain. But I say that to say that what happens in the stomach drives so many other things that happen in your body. So if we're not paying attention to the stomach, there is a direct correlation to all the other things that are happening in our bodies that could impact us in a negative way. So me having those pains and if I had ignored those pains, the chain reaction that would have caused would have led to my death. So I had to do what's necessary, pay attention, go see the doctor, get the diagnosis. It turns out after they told me that I had appendiceal cancer, the hospital that I saw unfortunately misdiagnosed what the type of cancer it was. They said it's a type of colon cancer, and it's not, right? As we know, colon cancer is separate from appendiceal cancer. But from a treatment perspective, and you can clarify this, Folu, maybe there's some similarities, right? But there's still information that needs to be conveyed so you have a very clear understanding of what it is and how best to treat. So I went to Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, and I had one of the best, the best hospital experiences I've ever had. I can honestly say that because I've been in the hospital multiple times, at least half a dozen times I've been in the hospital for different things, right, related to my health. And so having that experience was life-changing. Having the care that I received in terms of chemotherapy was life-changing. I had to go through chemotherapy. That was necessary. When they determined where I was with this cancer, basically the surgical oncologist that I saw let us understand that this cancer required, one, I had to get the tumor removed, and two, we had to do what's called a right hemicolectomy. And for folks who are watching this that don't know what that is, essentially what they do is they go in, it's done laparoscopically and robotically. So they use a robot. The laparoscopic means it's the incisions are smaller than if it were an open procedure. And so they're smaller incisions, and using a robot, they go in to be able to remove. And then I think they removed almost 8 inches of my colon and then did a colon resectioning. So all that was done to make sure that, one, they got all the cancer out, and then followed with the chemotherapy to ensure that they definitely got everything out so nothing would return. And so I went through about 8, almost 9 months worth of chemotherapy, and it was very intense. But one of the things that's really, really stood out for me in that procedure or throughout that process was the fact that my doctors listened to everything along the way. You hear people all the time talk about care team, and unfortunately, sometimes what's missing, depending on the institution you're working with, the doctors you're working with, is the care component. There was definitely a lot of care there because I had doctors listening to everything I said and doctors working with me when I said my body was too weak for me to continue. I couldn't do the chemotherapy anymore. I needed a break. And so my doctors allowed me to take a break. I was able to do acupuncture to get my system back to a place of normalcy and then take some time to rest and recuperate and restart again. So that is what I think also led to my healing really being so complete.
Appendiceal cancer is often managed and treated similarly to how we treat colon cancer. And that's partly because it just hangs off the colon. But we know that it's a different disease.
Yeah.
The type of surgery used for treating an appendix that is ruptured or infected for appendicitis usually called an appendectomy. You just take out the appendix. It's very different from the type we would use when we are treating appendiceal cancer.
Interesting. Yeah.
For cancer of the appendix, it's called a hemicolectomy. You take out the appendix, parts of the colon, and some tissue in that area because you want to capture as much of the cancer as possible, really all of it if you can. One thing I was wondering as you're sharing your story with us, Chris, is did your previous history of the heart attack make you pay more attention to your body? And that was why when you started to have symptoms that led to the diagnosis of the cancer, you immediately responded to it.
I definitely think it did. So when I had my first heart attack, obviously listening to my body got me to the hospital in time and saved my life. The doctors told me if I had missed this, if I just ignored it and thought it was heartburn, I would have died. All right. So probably that same night or the next day. So there's no, the blockage was 98% in one of my arteries. One of my coronary arteries was blocked 98%. So the fact that I was able to get there, do everything that needed to be done, and they went and put in a stent, I definitely would not have lived had I ignored that. So that made me hyper vigilant. I was always vigilant already, paid attention to my body, but that made me pay attention even more. So when anything is going on, I pay attention to the signs, I make a note, and then I communicate what's happening with my doctors. So that way, nothing can be missed. I'm not going to go on Google or any one of these platforms and start diagnosing myself before I get to the doctor. Yes, I do. Curiosity does get the better of me sometimes. But for the most part, I would have to say 99.9% of the time, I'm talking to my doctor anyway. There may be that 1% where I know really it's nothing. It's my brain playing tricks on me. But yeah, I always listen to my body.
Dr. Google, in my practice, I'm perfectly okay. I encourage it actually for patients to go search on Google or do whatever their research is, because the more they know about their disease, the better informed they are and the better their care will be. But the caveat is, the main thing is, whatever you find, make sure when we have our next meeting, you discuss it with me so I can help you tease out the fluff.
Oh, yeah. So as I said, it made me hypervigilant. When I was diagnosed with the cancer, to be honest, and this may sound strange, I almost suspected it was, because one of the things I realized is that the abdominal pain that I'd experienced is something that I'd noticed a couple times before. I had attributed it at the time to the rigorous exercises that I was doing. Because at the time I was doing a lot of burpees, I was doing all this stuff and my push-ups and my sit-ups and things of that nature. So I was just like, oh, it's the pain from getting in shape, right? And I was working on just getting my body back to where I felt it used to be. But I made sure to verbalize what I was experiencing when I got to the hospital. As a matter of fact, when I got to the hospital to deal with the appendix, when the doctor said, we're going to do a CAT scan, I said, yeah, I have a feeling it's my appendix. And he says, yeah, I think so too. So I knew before he verbalized to me what it was, I thought it was my appendix, right? Because I know where the appendix is located. Obviously not a doctor, but I just educate myself on my body. And so after everything was done, they said, yep, it's the appendix and we're going to have to do this appendectomy. And I was fortunate that the doctor chose an open appendectomy, because I felt like if he did a laparoscopic procedure, maybe he might have missed a tumor. There's a possibility they wouldn't, but I felt good about it, so I'm glad that happened. And then what I didn't share was, so I got the diagnosis of the cancer September 23rd. October 8th of 2021, which is the same year, just a few weeks later, I had my second heart attack. And funny enough, that day, October 8th was the day, if I'd gone with the other hospital, that was the day I was supposed to have the surgery to do the colon resectioning, before I even had the right hemicolectomy. So the right hemicolectomy was going to be scheduled for November when I went to see the doctor at Sloan Kettering. And so what happened is that had to be pushed, because once I told them what happened, they were like, okay, so you're going to get better. My cardiologist, admitted me to cardiac rehab again for the second time. So because, your body has to go through a stage of resetting itself, you being able to do exercise supervised before they feel comfortable to release me and clear me to do any kind of surgical procedure. Yeah, so I got clearance in late January of 2022. And by February 9th of 2022, I was doing that right hemicolectomy at Sloan Kettering.
You know, Chris, when people are diagnosed with cancer, they immediately want it taken out. They just want it cut out, remove it from me. How did you manage to keep it together, to stay sane, knowing that this cancer cannot be immediately taken out?
So the good thing is I met with doctors who knew exactly what they were talking about. These are doctors who, and this is not a pitch or a promo for Memorial Sloan Kettering, but the reality is you always, with whatever procedure you're going to do, you want to make sure your doctors know what it is that they're doing and have an understanding for whatever it is they're treating, whether it's cancer, heart disease, or whatever the health challenge is. In this case, the doctors at Sloan understood that this type of cancer is slow growing. That means that your chance of anything happening in the space of a few months is slim to none. So I felt confident that I didn't have anything to worry about. The fact is, the cancer, unfortunately, was sitting in me for years and had gone unnoticed. If not for what I call divine intervention, I would have died with that cancer in me had I not had appendicitis. Had it not been sitting on my appendix and causing it to almost rupture, I wouldn't be here, right? So the doctor's saying to me that, hey, it's safe. I felt confident. I felt assured that I could wait just a little bit more. And I didn't want to put myself at any further risk by doing any type of surgery while my heart was still recuperating. So I was fine. I had faith. I had confidence. I had a strong sense of belief that waiting would not make much of a difference. So I waited. I waited patiently, and the procedure was done successfully. February 9th, I got discharged from the hospital February 14th. And I kid you not, Folu, I don't know if I told you this. February 23rd, I had my third heart attack.
Man, you're just trying to get this cancer out, and the heart attacks just seem to be coming in the way, slowing you down, and obstacles.
Yeah.
How did you not feel at this time that, why me? Like, how did you not become discouraged and just give up?
So I'd be lying, right, if I said there weren't points where I questioned what was happening. I definitely had some questions, but I had more answers than anything. And the answers were clear to me that, one, there was something going on in my body, but what was even clearer was that I still had life. I wasn't dead. I wasn't incapacitated. I wasn't incapable of talking. I wasn't incapable of moving and doing things for myself. I wasn't bedridden or anything of the sort. So what did I really have to worry about other than getting better? And that wasn't something I worry about. That was just something I know I needed to do. I was determined to, one, get to the bottom of why I was having these heart attacks. Because the doctor at the time that I was seeing was a good cardiologist, but I think there was just something he was missing. And now the cardiologist that I'm with, he basically determined what was going on and why this was happening. And so I have a different treatment plan to ensure that these heart attacks hopefully don't happen again, even though one did happen again, but we'll go to that later on. So now I'm recovering, right? I get scheduled to come into Sloan to get my Metaport placed because now I have to start chemo. And so each one of these heart attacks, I got a stent because there is blockage. That one in 2022, I was about 95% blocked. So still significant blockage, still risk of death, all the things. So got a stent put in. I went, got the Metaport done. And that was around March that the Metaport was placed. And so I was scheduled to start chemo in April.
I noticed that you maintained a positive mindset through all these obstacles. What are your thoughts on whether that contributed to the good outcome, the positive outcome you had overall?
It's easier said than done. And I think that all of us have to learn. We have to take time and get a better understanding of life to know that our outlook on everything matters in how we care for ourselves and how we are able to survive and overcome challenges. The reality of it is, if I took a why me approach, I wouldn't be here today. Because why me leads you to give up. Why me leads you to believe that you're being targeted, believe that, the world is against you and the deck is stacked against you. And so it causes paralysis. And paralysis gets you nowhere because you're stuck. So I had to take a position that it's not a why me, it's a thank God this happened now. And I was able to get to identify it, that we were able to spot it, that we were able to treat it. And there's an opportunity for me to live. So it's thank God. I have a second chance. I have a third chance. I have a fourth chance. I'm going to keep doing what I have to do to push and beat whatever this is that's happening so that I can be here tomorrow and the day after and the day after. Because none of us knows when our last day will be, right? But how we live matters. And so for me, it's important that I actually live my life. And so that was what I was determined to do, is live my life.
Chris, I love what you just pointed out. Life isn't always fair, but we can't let that paralyze us or lead us to inaction.
Yeah.
That's not helping us at all. I did notice a pattern, Chris, that when you had providers that you felt good about, one thing you kept mentioning is they listened to you. It was not just about the resources they had access to or their brilliance. You just kept saying they listened to you.
Yeah. Yeah. So part of care is compassion. And compassion comes from listening. Compassion comes from sharing the experience with whoever it is that is going through it. So if I'm your friend and I care about you as a friend and you're in pain, I'm in pain. And if I'm in pain with you, I'm working to figure out how to relieve that pain so that you can feel better and I can feel better. Because I'm not going to feel good if I know you don't feel good. So doctors, nurses, everyone, if they're able to have that compassion, have that care for their patients, part of that care and compassion comes from listening. It comes from working to understand what is it that this patient is going through. What is it they're experiencing? How do I get them to a place of healing and recovery? And so I cannot express just how powerful it was to have that experience, especially when we're in a world where we hear so many negative experiences with doctors, with hospitals, with institutions when it comes to Black and brown bodies, right? So for me, it's not to say I haven't had some negative experiences, because I definitely did have a few. One in particular, also heart-related, right? But the reality of it is this experience overshadowed all the negative experiences that I've ever had, because it gave me a renewed sense of faith in the system and in the institutions that serve us, to know that there are institutions and there are doctors that are doing the work. And also, it also reminded me, Folu, that it is too easy to blame the system. And it's not to say there aren't systems to blame. There definitely are. But it's too easy to generalize and blame systems when we know that there are doctors and nurses and just people in general who are human beings doing things and fall short. So I say that to say, oftentimes the systems are working to do the right things, and they have unfortunately we've come across doctors or nurses or individuals within those systems that need help, that shouldn't be there, or that need some better training, right? I'm not being PC. I'm just, as I've gotten older, I think I've gotten a little wiser. And now it's not so much about, they all need to go. It's more of, let's look at how we can take the system that we have that we know works, and let's make the adjustments we need to make. Let's surgically remove the things and the people and so forth that don't work, just like we're dealing with the cancer, right? Because we know the body has different things that can make it work, but there's this one thing, this cancer that's causing the interference. Do we throw out the body or do we remove the cancer?
We remove just the cancer.
You remove the cancer. So that's the same approach we have to apply to all these. Now, there are some systems that are totally cancerous that, yeah, they have to go, right? But when you have a system that works, let's look at, okay, identify the problem. Where is the problem? If the problem exists in this branch, in this area, let's remove that area. Let's flood it with chemo, flood it with whatever we need to flood it with, get it strong again, and then we're good to go. And so that's my approach to this.
Now, the last question I have for you, one of the last questions I have for you, thank you for your time so far, Chris, relates to something that you alluded to before when you were talking about your heart attack. What is the role from your point of view and potential benefit that genetics and family history plays in diagnosing and managing disease?
So the heart disease that I have, it's genetic, and I have this thing called lipoprotein A, or LP little a. And so my numbers are extremely high, which leads to a faster buildup of plaque in my coronary arteries, which leads to these heart attacks. So to get that under control, there's specific treatment of drugs that I need to be on to ensure that this doesn't continue to happen. Unfortunately, diet and exercise has, I hate to say, very little to do with it, but it doesn't. In other words, you shouldn't have a poor diet and you should exercise, right? But in my case, I do exercise and I do have a good diet. But the other issue that exists needs to be treated by these medications. So knowing your family history is crucial, and having doctors that will dig to see what else may be going on to determine whether or not you're a victim of something genetic makes all the difference in the world to be able to figure out how best to treat you moving forward. So I do encourage people to find out what their family history is, ask the questions, dig. Sometimes coming from the Caribbean, coming from, different parts of the world, the different parts of the diaspora, we have parents who say things like, oh, he had sugar, which refers to diabetes, right? Or, they say all these different things, not landing on the specifics of what illness or what disease that person had, and giving you or arming you with, and don't get to arm you with the knowledge that you need to make a better decision concerning your own health and your health journey. So getting to the bottom of that was important. My mom, she unfortunately died, and she had several strokes leading up to her death. And so I have to be mindful of strokes. And, I do believe that the heart disease and things that I experienced in my family may have come from her side of the family. And as far as the cancer goes, there's no connection there, but knowing my mom's family history, knowing my dad's family history is helpful to determine my path forward. And so I'm mindful of not only just the foods I eat and exercising and so forth, but I'm mindful of the family history when it comes to, heart disease, when it comes to strokes, so that I make sure that I do the necessary things to stay on top of my heart health and my, blood pressure and so forth.
Family history is vitally important, and it can save lives. Scratch that. It will save lives of your loved ones. We need to discuss within families what people have. This is especially not happening in Black families and underrepresented minority families. It's very important because you will save the lives of your loved ones. Now, Chris, can you tell us about Heart, Body, and Soul? That's how we connected.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So as I expressed earlier, Heart, Body, and Soul, it basically started out of my own lived experience, my own health journey, right? I don't know if I shared this with you. I think I started chemo, like I said, in April of 2022. The nonprofit was born that same year. So while I was in the hospital in 2021, the idea came to me just out of things that I've been seeing, friends that I was hearing about that were in the hospital as well or sick as well. And I decided that I wanted to do something. And then the beginning of 2022 was further cemented in my mind that I have to do something. So the Black Man's Health Festival, as it's called, was what was born first. And this is a festival, and it's called and named the Black Man's Health Festival specifically because The disparities that exist in our communities, unfortunately, affect Black men at a rate that far exceeds other races and other genders, with the exception of Black women, all right? Because Black women and Black men, I think, are neck and neck in terms of healthcare disparities. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done in both communities to ensure that they're properly supported, right? But what was happening was I was noticing a lot of attention being paid to Black women, and rightly so. And there still needs to be more, but we weren't talking about the fact that Black men are dying from these diseases as much as we should be. And we've seen the loss of actors, rappers, athletes, and even athletes who were still with us, but who had heart attacks at young ages and so forth. And it just wasn't being spoken about enough. And I don't think that this Band-Aid approach of putting a health fair together or just getting on a panel and talking about it was enough. I just felt like more needed to be done. So I created the festival with the intent of a vehicle that could celebrate, support, and uplift men, uplift Black men especially, and give them a space where they felt safe, they could have a conversation, and it would emphasize the importance of touch. And the reason why I emphasize the importance of touch, Folo, because more and more studies show that what it does for you in terms of how it makes you feel. When you get a hug, all the messages and signals in your body, it makes you feel so much better. It brings you joy, especially if you spend 30 seconds with a real warm embrace with someone who's going through something. So we introduced things like massage, acupuncture, Reiki, yoga, breath work, tapping, all these things to get men to feel good and to make sure that they feel seen. And then we took it a step further and offer free haircuts for the men who have locks, free lock retwists, and then dry manicures for men to feel that sense of pride and joy and just a boost to self-esteem, right? I always think that anything I do, I'm going to do it because I know it's going to make me feel good. So if it makes me feel good, I'm pretty sure it's going to make another man feel good, right? And so a lot of what we've incorporated together as an organization is taking that approach. And then we go a step further by inviting hospitals like Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center, other doctors, other groups, to come in and be a part of that space and share information so the men can get access to quality information. They can screen for things like prostate cancer, colon cancer. They can have conversations around heart disease and diabetes, understand what these different things are and how it impacts them. And then we can have panel discussions where there are actual conversations and not a bunch of experts just sitting there preaching. We then started the health education series that you mentioned, Vitals and Vision, on a monthly basis. And that's designed to be kind of like a living room conversation. If you figure a bunch of friends come over to your house and you just start talking, that's what that is. I bring doctors, I bring specialists, I bring holistic practitioners into a room with a bunch of people from the community, and it's free. And we talk about different things that are happening, and we arm you with information that can help you to improve your health outcomes and make better decisions around your health and well-being. And I'm doing this, and I'm on a mission to continue doing this because, one, it makes me feel better, right? Because it's also a form of therapy for me. And two, but in making me feel better, I'm able to help others feel better as well. And I want us to live longer lives because we have the choice to do it, not because the choice was taken away from us. And unfortunately, as I said, the systems that do exist, there are systems that still exist that remove that choice from us. And so I want to be able to find ways to give us back that choice, put the power back in our hands to make the decisions and do what we need to do to live longer, fuller, and happier lives.
Even though I don't know what it is, I'm coming for a dry manicure. It sounds like something that I could use and really enjoy.
So basically what it is, I learned. So, normally the manicures, they put stuff on your fingers and so forth. So a dry manicure is just that. They clean up your nails, your cuticles and all that, and nothing is put on your hands. You don't get any polish or anything. It's just a dry manicure. But the feel-good portion of it, just sitting there and having someone pamper you that way, nothing takes away from that. That's just a beautiful experience.
Before we wrap up, Chris, is there anything else you would like to share?
Well, I do want to share that June 6th of this year, 2026, will be the 5-year anniversary of the festival. So I'm looking forward to everyone joining us for that special occasion. One of the things that I also want to share is the fact that though the festival is targeting Black men, it's open to the entire community. It's a free event that is open to the community. So we have men, women, children, all ages, all genders. Everyone is able to come out and participate in what we're doing. So we're not restrictive at all. It's just the highlight has to be there on the men because of the disparities that exist and because of my desire to effect that change so that we get better healthcare and we improve our health outcomes. So it's like when there's a problem, you got to highlight the problem, shout it from the mountaintop to get the attention that you need. And hopefully with that continued shouting and pointing and having that laser focus, we can get to a place where there no longer needs to be a Black Men's Health Festival. I don't want this to be something that we have decades later. I want us to get to a place where we eradicate that problem and now we're moving in a different direction. So everything that we do is with community in mind and community centered. So I just want to share that because I really want people to show up and be a part of it because it's a ripple effect. If Black men are being affected, then Black families are being affected. If Black families are being affected, then everybody else is being affected because we're all part of this ecosystem. We're all part of this community. And so we all have to take care of each other so that we can take care of each other.
Well, I can attest to the wonderful event that Black Men's Health Festival is, as I was able to attend it in the past, and look forward to joining you later this year for the 5th anniversary. Wow, time flies. Thank you very much, Chris. I really appreciate you being our guest today, for joining us, and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
That concludes today's episode. See you next time.